All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Freedom Fridays at Edge Radio Australia. Sorry, I just had a heap of messages pop up. Wasn't sure if we actually managed to go live or not. So, yes, it is Monday. This is a special episode because there's been a lot of fireworks in the Middle East, America, Israel, Iran, having a free-for-all over there at the moment. So, what we want to do, we want to go live with a couple of our Paramount commentators. So first of all, we've got Dan Worthington, ex-Air Force from memory, all the way from Utah joining us, and Derek all the way from the land of Car in Perth. Studio's not open yet. So anyway, so we've also got Derek coming in live from his car as well. So what I want to do, I want to quickly throw over to Dan first because actually both you guys are American, but Dan's actually in America. He's got the military background. Can you give us a quick breakdown of what's actually happened over the weekend with Trump, Israel, and Iran?
Well, Trump has lost his patience with Iran and the game playing that they were doing with respect to first deciding whether they're going to negotiate, then deciding that they weren't. Finally, their minister said they weren't going to negotiate, so Trump went ahead and ordered a strategic bombing of the major nuclear sites in Iran, and he fed them a bunch of bunker busters down the pipe hole on their major site that's deep in the mountain, and it should have obliterated it. They say two were needed to obliterate it. He used 6 of them, I think, to obliterate them, plus the other sites that were one is supposed to be even more hardened. They used, I think it was a total of 26 of these precision navigating bombs directly into the sites, as well as the big 3,000-pound Big Berthas that they launched into the site where they had to go 300 feet deep. And so, it should have left a smoking hole and limited their nuclear capability to practically nothing. Although I think they probably shipped a bunch of stuff out of country to Russia on those big cargo planes the day before. I wouldn't doubt that they had done something like that in order to mitigate damage. But they had enough enriched uranium to create something like 9 nuclear weapons, and so the United States really had to intervene. With Russia's support and help, technically, I don't imagine it's going to slow them down a whole heck of a lot. They'll slow them down for a while. Meanwhile, the Israelis have bombed their oil production facilities and that kind of thing, so that they can't make their deliveries to China. China depends 90% of their oil use is from Iran, and so that limits them. I imagine Russia can pick up some of the slack, but Russia also loses access to much of its drone manufacturing and other weapons it was getting from Iran to prosecute the war in Ukraine. So this is definitely a blow to that trifecta. North Korea is launched several missiles into the sea, kind of as a symbol of defiance, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, send as many as you want into the sea because that's fewer that you have. So, it was kind of a dumb thing. I think it's just this kind of posture and save face a little bit. So I'm supportive of Trump doing what he did. He kind of had to do it. It's like it sends a strong message to not just Iran, but also China and Russia and Ukraine and to the Europeans about, Trump says what he means and means what he says, and he does what he says he's going to do. And you'll never know because he doesn't pander to the press or give out information. He just does precision military strikes that are intended to achieve certain objectives, and that's how he handles it. I do not see us getting behind any further escalation with respect to the Israelis and their goals. I think they want to, I think, kill more scientists and more leaders of the Iraqi military, and that's certainly important to do, to have surgical strikes against the head. I don't know what they're going to do with their mullahs. I see a lot of resistance coming up in Iran itself amongst the people. This may be the time for them to throw off the religious control of the country. They were one of the most progressive democracies in the Middle East prior to the mullahs taking over and forcing all this religious demography onto the people that they may not wanted. They've murdered people, and it's just been a horrible regime that it needs to be stopped for the sake of freedom in that area and control. And the Iranians have been a wart on the butt of all the other Arab countries in that area, because they're they create so much havoc and they've supported all these rebel groups and everything, like Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis and everyone else. And so it's time to stop them. And so I agree with that. Derek has some concerns about going too far. I think they're warranted. I think I don't see Israel doing that. Go ahead, Derek.
I think it's more of a case of people are concerned that this is the World War III and a reflection of old regimes where, and I don't submit to that view at all. That is not my personal view. I do not believe this is World War III. As I said, I don't believe this is World War III. I think that some of the feedback that I've been getting from people from those kind of origins, as far as the Middle East is concerned, is that they're concerned that America is going in after weapons of mass destruction that were never found as they were under the Bush regime. This is a completely different regime in terms of governance. I also think you've got to bear in mind too, Trump's just done $6 trillion worth of investment in the Middle East, okay, with the other surrounding Arab nations. And you've got to keep that in mind. He's on great terms with Saudi Arabia right now. Fantastic terms. They didn't roll out the red carpet for him. They rolled out the purple carpet for him. And in that culture, that is royalty. Okay, that's huge. So, and they are dripping in money, the Arabs, and Trump's doing deals with them, and also vice versa. They're doing investments in the United States. So you've got to bear that in mind as you look at this perspective here. I think there's also a lot going on that we are not privy to. There's a lot of stuff that we're not hearing. But it reminds me of Trump's assertive move in his first term, where he was a laughingstock up to a point. He was a laughingstock amongst a lot of comedians up to that point, until he dropped that Big Bertha bomb on the Taliban in Afghanistan. Then everybody sobered up in terms of the narratives after that. There's like, this guy means business. He'll say what he's going to do. Or as Dan's rightly pointed out, he won't always show all his cards. When the press asks him, are you going to attack? He's like, oh, right, you expect me to answer that question.
Obliterated Soleimani too. Same way.
Yeah. So I think there's a knee-jerk reaction that people hit, and that's the fear button. And I'm going, hey, look, one, we don't have all the facts. We're not going to get all the facts when you're in the moment. Number two, I don't believe this is World War III. There's far too much investment going into those countries. And as Dan's rightly pointed out, I don't think Russia and China want to do that either. They don't want to go to war. And especially with a president at the helm who means what he says, and he is not afraid to pull the trigger. So I think that's important to bear in mind.
Well, and I also think that Russia and China both have a lot to gain, along with that region, with cooperating with President Trump and the United States. Because here's the thing, Trump is all about building economies and strengthening jobs and everything else, and trade and all that. He believes in. I didn't believe in war. He'll use those tools if he needs to kind of drive his point home in a big way. But he's all about peace and negotiating business deals. And so, I think if the Russians and the Chinese were smart, they would see this as an opportunity if they aren't too nationalistic and stupid about it.
So
Well-
I want to just quickly jump in here because both of you made really, really good points about China and Russia and what America has actually done. And Derek was talking about when Trump dropped the MIOB, so mother of all bombs, in his first term. One thing a lot of people are mentioning is normally if you attacked Iran or Iraq back in the day, what would happen? All these little terrorist splinter groups would then start be attacking back. But as far as I'm aware, as of this morning, not a single of these terrorist cells have actually launched any attacks on American soil, out American ships from the Houthis, at American bases in the different places around the Middle East. Also, it also shows another strong point. Russia has been attacking. You could argue that Ukraine and Iran are roughly the same size in military power. I'd say Iran would be a little bit more willing to actually die for their cause than the Ukrainians. Russia couldn't take Ukraine quickly. They threw everything they had at it, and it's still dragging on today. US and Israel have gone in, and in a matter of 7 days now, they've absolutely leveled all. I think I heard 55% reported on Fox News that 55% of all their air defense is gone. The nuclear program is now gone. Most of the ability to manufacture any weapons or any form of resistance is now gone in a matter of 6 days. So it's a massive warning to not only just China, Russia, North Korea. It's also a massive warning to all the splinter groups. You touch us, we're going ham. So, Derek, from your contacts, how fearful are people of retaliation from these splinter groups that you've heard from?
I haven't spoken to them. It's a Monday here in Australia, so I haven't spoken to them since then. Over the weekend, it was mostly feedback I was receiving the latter part of last week, but this strike has just happened over the weekend, so I haven't had an opportunity to speak to them just as yet. But I think, one of them was one of the gentlemen that were talking to me was ex-military, ex-Australian Defence, and he was relaying to me the fact that, they went in with the conflict before with the United States and over weapons of mass destruction, and that was a lie. They didn't find those weapons of mass destruction. And it's like, look, I think when they, in the military, they do the dirty work for the country, and kudos to Dan, who's served in that capacity as well. I think though, from the feedback I'm getting, once they put their lives on the line, they find out that it was for a lie, that there was actually no weapons of mass destruction in that instance. It's like, well, why did we go? What was that? And I think, you've got to bear that in mind. Vietnam wasn't all that long ago in our history as well. So if there's a legitimate reason to fight, to go to war, I think people go, okay, fine. But if it's based on other ambitions, then there's massive reluctance because these people are putting their lives on the line.
Yep. I must admit, I don't think Trump has any intention to do a regime change, because you've already seen with the offer that he made to Gaza, he didn't want to take it over. He didn't want to put it in the hands of Israel. I don't think there's any border expansions plans there. He wants to rebuild the area because peace generates a lot more money than war. War makes money really quickly, but it's very limited. Where a peacetime economy, you get that constant strong growth and you get much more benefit on the long term of peace. So I can't see a regime in the mind, especially after, like you said, after what happened with Iraq. I don't think, and there was a poll that, again, I think it was Fox News that did this polling. Do they support the bombings, like both Democrats and Republicans? There seems to be support from both sides of the aisle of this one, but both sides of the aisle did not support an extended occupation or going in boots on the ground. They just want to go, right, get rid of the nuclears, settle everything down. So we've got time to go back to the negotiation table and negotiate peace in the Middle East. And I think that's what America wants, and I think that's what Trump's going to deliver.
Look, and I agree. And I think, you've got a gentleman who's in charge of the art of the deal that wrote that book, right? And he keeps reiterating, with the art of the deal, they had 60 days to negotiate. So he's been at the table negotiating. And he's like, look, you muck around, you can't muck around here. He's said from the beginning, they're not to have a nuclear bomb. I think the United States is trying to put this narrative on it. Look, this is not war. This is just a strike. No nukes. That's it. And that's where they draw the line.
So even the Israelis have been restrained. They've gone after military targets and after military leaders and after nuclear scientists. They haven't been targeting regular civilians.
Right.
How long do you think that's going to continue, considering overnight, so your overnight, Iran launched a heap of strikes into like residential areas?
I think that they're going to continue to attack the launching capacity of the Iranians in order to send out the weapons like that. I think they're going to attack military targets, military leadership targets. I wouldn't be surprised if they took out some of the mullahs. I think they'd love to take out Khomeini, but I'm not even sure he's in the country right now. He's probably off in a Russia spa, sort of, grooming his beard. So, I think that Israel has limited objectives here. The first objective was to take the Houthis out, take the Hezbollah out, take out the other group in the Gaza out, so that they no longer have the capacity to do what they did on October 9th. And then the second objective is to get rid of the nukes, so that Iran is toothless with respect to their nuclear ambitions. And so they really only have conventional capacities. I think a third objective is to take out their capacity to do ICBMs and other kinds of military technologies like that, kill a few rocket scientists and others. They'll go as far as they need to go to make Iran toothless, because eventually, because the only thing mullahs ever had was the threat of destroying Israel, and once that's gone, there's nothing left. And certainly, there's not going to be enough legitimate resistance to cause Israel much harm in the future, as long as they play their cards and are nice, or fair and equitable to people, right? That's a key. It's like, that's what the United States has always done. And when it's defeated enemies, they've always been fair and equitable. They've always been generous to their enemies. And that settled them down for a little bit until some other nutcase rises to power.
Well, it worked really well with Japan. Have a look how strong of an ally Japan now is of America, especially after their show of strength there. So we do have a question come in from Damo on Twitch. So yes, we are on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and later on we'll be up on X. So Damo asked, will we now finally have a new regime in Iran? My personal feeling is no, but I'm going to throw it to Dan. You've got much more experience in this area than I have.
I don't know. I think that's what everybody's sort of hoping. But I don't know. I mean, there have been massive conversions of Muslims into Christianity in Iran. People are getting tired of the regime, tired of the control and the interruptions in their lives and the inability for them to move forward. They don't really care a whole lot about women's rights or anything like that, because of probably the traditions of the country. But they, it's people are tired. It's sort of like what happened with Trump and get elected. People got tired of all the crap the Democrats were trying to do because they're being lied to. Well, the mullahs have been lying to the people for years and manipulating them and telling them untruths. And most everybody knows it. Anybody with a mind that has access at all to Western television understands what the score is. Unfortunately, the idea that America is the great Satan, it was true when the Democrats were in charge, because they have no morality. They have no, they are the great Satan. The Democrats are in line with the Illuminati and the others who want to destroy the world, and for their own benefit and power. But Trump's not like that. He's America first. There's a difference. He wants America to be and Americans to be first. He's not out to enrich himself. I mean, other than the fact he is a businessman, he will enrich himself, but not off the backs of the American people.
And he's proven that time.
So yeah, it's been interesting to see Trump. He'll pay for things out of his own pockets, where I think previous presidents would rely on the taxpayer to do it. He's just put a couple of flagpoles in the front and back of the White House there.
Mhm.
Additionally, he paid for the parade the previous week. Now, it's interesting the timing of that Army parade celebrating 150 years, and then we have what's happened this weekend. But
250.
Fireworks. Great way to set off some fireworks.
Well, we found out Biden was paying Obama $12 million a year to be an advisor. I mean, just stuff like that makes you just absolutely sick. The crap that Biden and Obama have done to the American people and the sham it's been is just unconscionable.
So we've got another comment here from Damo. Thank God for America. If Iran got nukes, it would have been all over. My personal belief, I think we would have seen boots on the ground if Iran actually had nukes. I don't think they would ever. The amount of intelligence coming out, I don't know if they've actually got someone inside of these bunkers, or at least someone in the very high echelon. Like, I'm talking about Israel here, for them to find out where people are, where people's bedrooms are. The intelligence network is phenomenal. So even if there was a hint that they were in the process of constructing or building a actual working nuclear bomb or a dirty bomb, I genuinely believe America would not allow that to happen. We've seen that again. I hate to do the comparisons, but with Iraq, we saw how quickly they went in with that. I do not believe they would have allowed that bomb to see the light of day.
Well, Mossad is much better at these kinds of things than we are. But Mossad isn't to be trusted either. You want to know. I mean, Epstein was all part of a Mossad operation. So, you can't trust Israel any farther. You can throw them like most everybody else. It's not, on the American side, they've shown themselves to be not trustworthy. Now, a lot of the reasons Trump is supporting Israel is because over biblical principles. It's the reason why that he moved the embassy to Jerusalem and other things. It's because the West, especially America, supports the idea of biblical prophecy, and Jerusalem as being the place where that will be restored when Christ comes. I mean, I'm just saying what it is. I'm not trying to make a religious point here, but it is, and it highly motivates the Christians in the United States to support Israel for that reason. But what we don't understand is many of the Israeli people are not even that religious anymore. Not only are they not Jewish in practice, they don't. There is a larger number of Messianic Jews now that believe in a second coming and that kind of thing. And there's been a lot of interchange between the United States and the Jewish rabbis and others who are Messianic. And some of the signs of the times that have been predicted for Jerusalem are starting to come true with respect to the priests and others. So, it's really interesting to watch everything as it unfolds. As we start ending into a very dangerous time in our history that's been predicted by Scripture and Revelation.
So the other point I want to raise here, I'm just having a look at a couple of the news headlines in Australia. So our PM has supported the strikes, but is very, very concerned about any further escalation. Penny Wong, our finance minister, is urging a return to diplomacy. She has openly supported Iran in the past. And then there's a couple of Labor heavyweights are actually saying that the airstrikes from America are inconceivable and probably should never have happened in the first place. So my concerns is when we have countries like Australia, unfortunately I am Australian, in this situation, openly condemning the United States, or I won't say Australia is condemning them, but you've got some political heavyweights condemning what America has done. Have you seen much backlash from around the world against US?
Well, I really have an idea for these people. They can all travel to Iran and all together so they can have kind of a meeting among themselves. And then we can bomb the hell out of them too. Then we have no more problems.
Didn't Israel do that to some
problem? Yeah. I mean, I think that's a solution. I mean, we got some people in the United States who are in our leadership that could go over there too and join the crowd, because there's, this is ridiculous. It gets ridiculous. Iran has shown that they're not trustworthy. They've manipulated taken money from the United States and used it to fund our enemies and the enemies of Israel. And they are the number one promoter of terrorism around the world. Now they are a proxy for Russia and China in doing all that too. I mean, it's the problem is who's the proxy of whom, right? But Iran is trying to keep its hands clean by going through Hezbollah and the Houthis and others. But the Russians have been behind all of it and helping arm them and creating unrest in the Middle East and everything else. So this is all this terrorist game is a political game. The Russians have been behind it for years. The Chinese have been behind it. None of those people have clean hands. The United States doesn't have clean hands for that matter.
Of course not, especially with Hillary Clinton.
With the CIA and others, I mean, it's just been, the Nazis and a lot of the Nazi intelligence people ended up coming to work for the United States back in after World War II. And it's sort of like, well, gee, we didn't like them because they were so immoral, and yet we hired them and employed them, right? Because we wanted the rocket program and other things. So none of us have clean hands.
So one thing I'm a little bit concerned about happening, we saw how the world overreacted with the Russia and Ukraine war, especially over energy supply. So with Iran turning around and saying that they're going to block the strait to the south of Iran, stopping, I think I've heard a report saying 40% of all oil passes through that strait. Do you think, and this is probably more of a Derek question, Derek, do you think the world is going to run around like headless chickens and all of a sudden the fuel prices are go through the roof, cost of living is going to get even worse again, and like people just massively overreact? Or are we used to this now with the Ukraine and Russia and they're just going to be a little bit more calm about it?
I heard the first part of your question, Travis, so I'll answer that part, and then if I need to fill in the next bit, I'll let you do that. My phone dropped out here, but the futures on the oil markets is already up. It went up last week by about 13% increase. So Brent oil and all that is trading roughly around $72 US a barrel, and it was around 65 or so a few weeks ago. I'm not surprised to see that at all. In fact, it's funny. I've got the jerry cans in the back of the car here and intend to fill up while it's cheap myself for the show. But look, the markets always overreact, and so I don't think it's going to stay up there for long. I think America's got its own supply of oil and is moving towards energy independence. So I don't think it's going to be a major issue in terms of supply and demand. There are other sources it'll come from.
I think that if you've looked at the Mediterranean, there is enough of a military presence by the United States to blow the hell out of Iran if they decide to blockade the channel. That's exactly what will happen. The United States won't necessarily intervene in Iran itself beyond this, but they will protect the channel and the shipping channels, and they'll blow the hell out of any Iranian interference in that area. They are there, they're equipped, they're ready to go, and this is a strategic corridor for the United States as well. We don't care about China getting its supply, but we would probably even discourage that. But we certainly want to, if Iran isn't careful, they're going to lose control over their own ability to ship oil. That's what's going to happen. The United States just will cut them off and just say, okay, fine, you do that. You guys will end up starving, and your people will starve because you are causing this problem for the rest of the world, and we're not going to put up with it. Why should we? And, and the thing is, we've got Donald Trump that's overseeing this. Is he going to put up with this? Answer the question seriously. No, not for a minute. He won't. He'll retaliate against the Iranians if they try. And the Iranians should know that. They're not that stupid. It's just one more way for them to save face and flex their muscles. It's not going to work.
Yep. One thing we keep hearing this term, and I'm getting a few questions about it. Is America going to try and put in a regime change again? Because they've done it multiple times, multiple different countries. My personal hope is that the regime change will actually come from the Iranian people themselves. I genuinely hope that America under Trump does not enter into Iran. I fully support any sanctions, any military actions they could take if they do try to block the straits, or if they try to attack different countries, or if the splinter cells do start firing up. Absolutely support them going in and stopping military targets. I do not think they should be getting involved politically. I think that needs to come from the Iranian people themselves. So I'm going to quickly throw this one to you, Derek. With your contacts, because you do have a lot of people who you trade and deal with and do business with who are from the Middle East and different areas, what's your feeling that you're getting from them regarding regime change and a potential American involvement directly into Iran?
Again, too early to say, Travis. It's only just happened, so I haven't had those conversations with them and have it over the weekend. I think most of them thought that the deals that the United States was doing in terms of the $6 trillion of trade with the $6 trillion worth of trade with the other surrounding nations, they thought that was a good thing, with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and those surrounding regions. So I think that what we've got to recognize here is that what is the mindset of the current Iranian regime right now is very different from the people themselves. You've always got to separate, obviously, politics from the people and the citizens. And I think that's what's really under there. And I'm not getting the impression that the mindset of the Iranian powers to be is the same as the surrounding nations. And so I think that's very important going through this, that this is a unique situation in terms of diplomacy and, of course, negotiation.
So, all right, Dan, what's your feelings from your contacts as well in America?
I think there's a saying about these kinds of things based on our experience as Americans. If you break it, you own it. And we were in Iraq a very long time because we did break it and we owned it. There was a strategic balance of power between Hassan and his regime and the Iranians. They had gone to war and killed, 12 million people between the two countries in prior years. And so there was a balance of power there. Once Saddam was gone, Iraq came in, started influencing the politics in Iraq. We ended up staying for, 20 some odd years at great expense, which was really, really stupid. And especially, I happen to think, number one, there were weapons of mass destruction. I think they ended up to Syria. I think they went from there to Russia to get them out of the way. I do think there were weapons of mass destruction hidden in Saddam's tunnels. They got them out for reasons that they wanted to discredit the intelligence community in the United States. You guys may disagree with that. I don't care what you believe, but the point is that this time the claims that that Iranians were enriching the uranium in large quantities is true. There's no question about that. They've been caught red-handed doing it, and they had to be stopped because they've been developing the missile systems, delivery systems, everything else that goes along with it. They had some other things that they didn't have as components to that, but easily provided by the Russians. So you have to remember who their partners were and that kind of thing. And of course, the North Koreans, who do have intercontinental ballistic missiles and ability to fire nuclear strikes. So I don't see the United States intervening on the ground to cause it. But I imagine the Black Ops folks and everything else will be there. The intelligence people will be there trying to work things in the background, just like Israel has been for the last 60 years or whatever. And I do suspect that the mullahs will feel the pressure. And there may be regime change. I don't know. But again, I think as far as domestic terrorism is concerned in the United States, I think Homeland Security has that locked down as tight as they can get it. They're trying to identify all those illegals that are there from Iran in an attempt to cut the head off the snake. So I think the United States is doing everything they can from a defensive perspective to minimize damage from involvement by Iran. We'll just see if we're successful at it. Joe Biden did everything he could to destroy our country at the time he was in the leadership position, the feeble old man. But he's not the one that made those decisions. It was his cohorts and the people who funded his bank accounts behind the scenes. So anyway.
So looking at what's happened, we've pretty much covered everything that's going on now at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty about what's going forward. What would you like to see America do and Israel do moving forward, Dan?
I would like, I'd like us to see Israel continue to weaken the military targets in Iran, destroying any of their military capability, keep cutting the head off the snake, reducing the ability of the mullahs to really do anything as far as retaliating against the Israeli people, and that kind of thing, and attacking American positions in the Middle East. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the U.S., defend the Straits of Hormuz and the shipping lanes and that kind of thing. To the extent that the Iranians have the balls to try to interfere with that, that seems to be what they're planning to do. I don't think ultimately it will work because of the naval and military strength the U.S. has in that region. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistically hopeful that this thing will sort of take care of itself and die down over time as all the parties solidify their positions to remove the bargaining position of the mullahs in Iran. When they do that, the people will rise up eventually.
Okay. When I was watching, I've seen a couple of documentaries about what happened to Japan after they dropped the nuclear bombs. And so what happened is a couple of the generals wanted to keep fighting to the absolute death. A vast majority of the people and the other military advisors turned around, squashed them. I think a couple of those generals actually got executed, and then they signed for peace. So what my hope is that clearer minds in Iran will actually take over, that they'll actually come to the negotiation table, they'll do an unconditional surrender and allow America in to ensure that all these nuclear sites have been squashed. And then what I'd like to see is for something similar to what's happening in Gaza, where America, through business, will help to reconstruct Iran back to where it was, say, pre-1970s. Because I genuinely believe Iran could be a great trading partner. I think it's the regime that's causing a lot of problems, and that's something that I would like to see. I was going to throw to Derek, but it looks like his internet's just cut out, or he's moving into the studio. But what I'm thinking is, because this is a little bit impromptu and we do have another show coming up, I might wrap this one up. For the final thoughts for the people listening, or if Derek comes back, have you got any final comments for us today, Dan?
Again, the key to our security and our personal freedom in the United States is for the majority of the American people to exercise faith in God, to depend on the Creator for those blessings that America has been blessed abundantly with because of public virtue, and the majority of Americans have been faithful to their Almighty and their Creator. I think that what happens when we lose that, and we saw that during the last administration, their attempt to destroy the American family, encourage all these deviant behaviors, everything else, that we destroy our public virtue, we destroy our connection, our values, and our connection to families, and that those cultural morals that made America great. And by the way, many Hispanics and others have the same cultural morals as Americans. They believe in strong families and everything. They believe in freedom. They got away from regimes that were not giving them freedom, and they had drug cartels and others that made them in fear. And what are these countries trying to do? Is export the drug cartels, export the sex trade, the sex traffickers, others, and corrupt the American people. And it's true. Everyone's sort of into that. The Saudis would like to see us corrupted for some parts of the. I mean, it's amazing. They know that if the United States stands strong, and that we are a moral people who believe in God, then we will be the beacon for the rest of the world, and the Lord God Almighty will protect us in future years. If we're not, we'll be destroyed, and it's like with the other wicked people around the world in the end of the days, right?
Yep. All right, awesome. So it looks like Derek's not coming back on this one, so we'll leave it there for now. So we'll wrap up here. Dan, thank you very much for your time. We're going live on Monday, which we don't normally do for Freedom Fridays, but we'll be putting a replay up on Friday. So again, thank you for staying up. I know it's very late on your end of the world. And if there's any updates that come through, we'll let people know as well. So this is Travis all the way from Halong Bay. My final comments is the people in Asia, like I've been speaking to a lot of people here in Vietnam. I've got a few mates in China, Japan, a few other places. None of them care. They're literally, their stance is about time. So on that note, I'm really happy with what's happening in America at the moment. I'm glad that the strikes were a success. I just hope America doesn't take it too far. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this one up. This has been the Freedom Friday. Stay tuned because the Greater Wealth will be up in about 20 minutes time. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Take care.